Welcome to today's edition of the Statler Financial Radio Show. Your financial security is our business. Have a question for the team? Call today, 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188.
Welcome to the Statler Financial Radio Show. I'm your host, Danielle J. Martin. Here with me is founder, president of Statler Financial Services, is Phillip Statler. And today we're diving into the topic that's been dominating the headlines: political tensions and domestic conflicts that could have a ripple effect on the economy, and more importantly, on your financial future. One example making waves right now is the recent tension between President Trump and Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell. So, Phillip, let's dive into it. These kinds of conflicts often leave people wondering how they might impact their investments and retirement plans. So can you help us unpack why this matters to our listeners?
Well, you know, Danielle, the Federal Reserve has kept interest rates higher. And the reason for that was to help combat inflation. You know, the Powell and the Federal Reserve, they have this target that they want inflation at 2%, and we haven't gotten there. And so they're keeping those numbers higher, the interest rates higher, to help keep inflation down. While at the same time, President Trump has argued for significantly lowering those interest rates to spur economic growth. Now, I got to tell you, there's a sideline to that, too, not only to spur economic growth, but to reduce the federal government's interest payment, right? Because as interest rates tick up, hey, our government's debt payment the interest has gone up too. So we've had to pay a higher debt payment. So it's kind of a twofold reason that he really wants to look and have interest rates down. But for you and I, yeah, it would be nice to have lower interest rates, but it would also be nice to have inflation under control. So that's one area. So this kind of tension between political leaders and the Fed, it isn't new, but it can create some uncertainty in the markets. And we've seen that this year as a whole, where not only have the tariffs added to the whole uncertainty of the markets, the Federal Reserve and interest rates have as well. And so for retirees that are getting close to retirement, this uncertainty can feel especially unsettling because it could directly impact investments, borrowing costs, even the value of your savings, because those higher interest rates that we've seen lately have transferred into higher CD rates, higher interest rates at savings accounts. So the retirees, they like that. That's a better fixed income for them. But the question is, when are rates going to drop, and how's that going to affect everybody else?
Phillip, you're right. You make a lot of really good valid points here. And so with all of this uncertainty, many retirees, they're probably wondering, how does this affect my retirement? That's the main question. So what should they be thinking about right now?
Well, I think, again, uncertainty in the economy and the markets is exactly why having a solid retirement income plan is so important. You need that plan in place so that you can make sure that you're on track every year and make those little adjustments that may be necessary as we continue to head down that path. And you can't control what happens in Washington or at the Federal Reserve, but you can prepare and you can control how prepared you are for the ups and downs of the market. And so that's a good thing. I've always talked about, there's certain areas of diversification. And the first area of diversification that you need to look at is how much money do you have in the market versus how much money do you have safe and secure. That's really the first diversification you need to do. And so that really talks about that there. And then the last thing is a good income plan really helps ensure you have steady, predictable income to cover your needs, no matter what's happening in the economy. And that's really what it's about, Danielle, is having the income that you need in retirement.
And Phillip, I know as we're talking about this, we're keep hitting the nail on the consistency of talking to your financial advisor. But in retirement, the number one fear is running out of money. So what does a retirement income plan actually look like?
So an income plan really looks at and starts with understanding your income sources. So Security, if you have a pension, what are your personal savings? How can we parlay that into a pension for you? Then we create a strategy to turn those savings into income through methods like systematic withdrawals, maybe some annuities booked in there, dividend paying investments or dividend paying portfolio. These are all areas that we can help create income. So the goal is to balance growth and preservation, so your money can last as long as you need it to. And again, that balanced growth and preservation, that's the same thing. That's the first diversification you need to make. Growth versus safety. That's where we need to be. And folks, that's why I developed the Core Retirement Design, to help you create the retirement you always dreamed of. First, we focus on risk, and that's that balanced growth versus preservation. Then we look at taxes. And what does that look like? How can we reduce your taxes as much as possible, not just today, but throughout your whole retirement lifetime? And then lastly, putting together that income plan so that you know where your income is going to come from day in, day out, month in, month out, year over year. You know where your income is going to come from. And that's our Core Retirement Design. Folks, it starts with a 30-minute phone call with you and I, discussing your goals, where you want to be, what you've done so far, and how well you've been able to save for that retirement day. And we'll make sure that you're doing the right things. If not, we'll point out some things that maybe you can change or help you to get on the right path. To get started, like I said, it's a 30-minute phone call. Give us a call, 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188.
There's no cost, there's no obligation to talk with Phillip and the team at Statler Financial Services. Again, in case you didn't get that number, it is 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188. Now, Phillip, let's talk about Social Security for a moment. With all of this economic uncertainty, how can retirees make the most of their Social Security benefits?
Well, Danielle, the key is timing. Timing your Social Security claiming. When are you going to claim that benefit? At 62 versus waiting until 70 can mean a big difference in your monthly check. And so we help clients figure out the right time to claim based on their unique situation, because everybody's different. Some people have a big enough portfolio that they can wait. They can pull off of that portfolio or that IRA for a little while instead of dipping directly into Social Security. And sometimes that doesn't make sense. Sometimes it makes sense to take Social Security early based on your current circumstances. So it's a puzzle that we help you put together. And Social Security is just one piece of that whole big puzzle, though. It's important to integrate it into your overall income plan. And that's why I believe income planning is so important and is much overlooked when it comes to retirement planning. There's a lot of people that have full-blown financial plans, but it doesn't do a good job of focusing on income planning. And that's important when you're heading into retirement. That's where you need to start, is putting together an income plan.
And what about market volatility? Many retirees, they worry about how these ups and the downs could impact their income. So what can they do to help protect themselves?
Well, Danielle, that's where diversification is so critical. Making sure that you don't put all your eggs in one basket. And then when it comes time to pull money out, that you've got options of where's the best place to pull it from. I tell my clients, I just had a conversation actually last week with a client. I said, look, because they were asking, how do we take money out? I said, when you need money, let me know how much you need, what it looks like. And then what I'm going to do is look to see of all your accounts, where's the best place or multiple places to take that money from? What is it going to be most tax efficient? Where's the best place right now because of the economic situation we're in? But all those things come into play. Consider having a mix of growth investments and safer options like bonds and annuities is a big deal. We need to have that diversification between those two pots of money. We also recommend having cash reserves to cover a year or two of expenses, so you're not forced to sell investments during downtimes. I tell most of my clients, look, $25,000 to $50,000 in an emergency fund is what you need to have. If you have more than that, then you probably have too much in the emergency fund. But that 25 to 50,000 is a good number to help people weather the ups and downs of the marketplace, Danielle.
And Phillip, as we're continuing talking about this, for those listening right now, what's the first step that they can do to create a retirement income plan?
Yeah, that's a good question. You have to start where you understand your expenses, what you'll need to cover, essentially, like housing, healthcare, and food. Those are the basics we need to make sure we've got covered, as well as what does your discretionary spending look like for travel, for fun and entertainment. Those are important. But you need to have a realistic set of expenses laid out, because that's going to help us know how much income we need to create. So then we're going to work with a professional to map out your income sources and create a strategy to fill the gap, because your gap's going to be created from, you got Social Security, maybe you have a pension, and you're going to take those things minus the expenses. What's the gap? And that's what we need to fill, that gap right there. So the goal is to have a plan that gives you confidence and reassurance no matter what happens in the economy. It's important to have that security of knowing that you're going to be okay. Look, if you're listening and you've saved at least $250,000 or more for retirement, folks, now's the time to take action. The uncertainty that we're seeing in the economy is a reminder that your retirement plan is too important to leave the chance. Here's how we can help. We can help you create a personalized income plan that helps preserve and grow your savings. You'll get a flexible strategy to help you stay steady, even in uncertain markets. And we'll guide you through ways to help maximize Social Security, manage taxes, and preserve your wealth. Folks, don't wait until it's too late. Call us today at 863-877-1180 to schedule your 30-minute, no cost, no obligation phone call, where we'll make sure that you're on the right track to the retirement you always dreamed of. Together, we'll help you build a plan to bring clarity and stability to your retirement. Again, give us a call at 863-877-1188.
There's no cost, there's no obligation. Like Phillip said, there's no time to waste. The headlines may be unpredictable, but your retirement doesn't have to be. So call that number, 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188. Well, the excitement is just getting started. Stay with us. You're listening to the Statler Financial Radio Show. We'll be right back.
Turn your plans of yesterday into yes today. Don't wait another day for a routine checkup of your retirement plans. Call Statler Financial Services, 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815.
Who likes uncertainty? Wall Street certainly doesn't. With fears of a potential recession and partisan politics, there's a lot of uncertainty right now. What will your future look like? Will your taxes go up? Will your savings go down? Here in the Sebring area, financial advisor Phillip Statler and the team at Statler Financial Services have seen uncertainty come and go. Phillip can help you create a plan designed to preserve your finances in uncertain times. And it's not a matter of if those uncertain times will show up, but when. Call 863-877-1188 now to meet with Phillip Statler and the team at Statler Financial Services. Call 863-877-1188 and schedule your visit today. 863-877-1188. Advisory services offered through Second Half Financial Partners, LLC, a SEC-registered investment advisor. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
Time to retire right. This is the Statler Financial Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Statler Financial Radio Show. I'm your host, Danielle J. Martin, along with Phillip Statler. He's the president and founder of Statler Financial Services. Now we're talking about what it looks like creating a 5-star retirement plan. Well, picture a 5-star luxury resort. You have lush greenery, you have scenic views, and top-notch customer service. Now picture a run-of-the-mill roadside motel. Are you going into that? It's a roadside motel, probably is not going to be able to achieve that 5-star rating because I'm sure you know something is missing. Well, look at it like this. If you could rate your retirement plan, how many stars would you give it? So, Phillip, let's take this a step further. We're trying to see how ready we are for retirement. And I love this analogy of how can we make sure that our plans have a 5-star rating? What does that look like?
Well, I think that when we look at that, we have to look at 5 main points that I believe that you need to have to achieve that 5-star rating, right? We need to have a reliable income plan that is consistent and conservative. We need to have a wealth management strategy. We need to have a tax efficiency strategy. We want to be tax efficient in retirement. We need to have a plan to address healthcare. And then lastly, an estate planning strategy. What does that look like for you? And I know, I call them stars, but in reality, they're just 5 key components of having a great comprehensive retirement plan, Danielle.
And I love that you listed all of them out for us, Phillip. And what I would love for us to do is you make this sound easy every time. So what is the first step when we're talking about building this overall 5-star, but like you mentioned, it's components to an overall comprehensive retirement plan? What is the first step for building a reliable income plan?
Well, I guess you would start with how much income are you going to need, right? In retirement, what does that look like? And I think that there's some misconceptions here because a lot of folks have come to believe that, well, I only need half my income, or I only need, 70% of my income because I'm not going to pay as much in taxes and blah, 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 right? I mean, that's the thinking a lot of people have. And what we are actually finding is that, we really need to come somewhere greater than that number, somewhere probably between 70 and 100% of your current income. And that's really if you're debt free. If you're not debt free, then we definitely need to probably 100%, right? So that's kind of the first thing is how much do we need? And that comes down to what are we going to spend? So we have to kind of put together that budgetary item and determine what our spending is going to look like in retirement. And then from there, we can build the income. Where's it going to come from? How are we going to get it? Where's it going to rest? I use a bucket system where we bucket out money. We got this bucket for a certain period of time, and we've got 4 or 5, maybe 6 buckets of money that we're using to create that income over your lifetime. And so it's just having that process in place to be able to work through it.
Phillip, you brought up a good point of making sure we have enough money to last us as long as we live. So what are some of the tools for generating some income in retirement?
Well, I think when we look at tools, there are obviously bank accounts. I mean, we've got Social Security, whether you call that a tool or not. I think it is to the standpoint of when do you take it? You can minimize it or maximize it, right? And that becomes part of the process and the tool part of Social Security. There are things like annuities that were created specifically to help generate income. Now, when we talk about annuities, there's obviously you draw a little T account, Ben Franklin, and there's positive and negatives, right? So you have to weigh those out to make sure it's going to work the way you want it to, and it's going to add value to your income planning process. A lot of people, they have their portfolios. They have dividend stocks. Some people are just using CDs right now because interest rates are so high. So there's all kinds of tools out there. Some people have rental property, right, that are paid for, and that's generating a lot of income for them. So there's a lot of tools out there. You just got to know how to put those tools to work in your current circumstances. And again, that comes back to the process of why I developed the Core Retirement Design. The Core Retirement Design looks at 3 key components. It looks at risk in your portfolio, and it measures that. It looks at taxes, not just today, but taxes down the road and what that's going to look like to you in your retirement. And lastly, an income plan. Having that income plan in place so that you are confident in the retirement income that you're going to get month in and month out. The Core Retirement Design. Folks, give us a call at 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188 to schedule your core retirement analysis. Again, that number is 863-877-1188.
You know, Phillip and his team have been doing this for many years, so they have experience in the questions that you have. They have answers to them, so there's no cost or obligation. All you have to do is give him and his team a call at 863-877-1188. Again, that number is 863-877-1188. Phillip, can you talk about what is the difference between an income plan and a wealth management strategy?
Well, an income plan, Danielle, is setting up streams of income. A wealth management strategy is where do we put those, right? How do we get them? What is a strategy? And I look at more as a risk strategy because when we head into retirement, we cannot afford another bear market like we saw in 2000 and 2008 to wipe out everything that we've worked hard for. And so, we saw a lot of people that their 401ks were cut in half during those bear markets. And if you are getting close to retirement, that's something you cannot afford. And so we look at first diversification. We look at two types of diversification. The first type is safety versus risk. And folks, you need both buckets. You need both key components. The question is, how much do you put in each one of them? And that's part of the wealth management strategy, is determining how much goes to safety, how much goes to risk. Then in the risk bucket, you've got to diversify even further. But that's really the wealth management strategy, is where do we put the assets to create the income that we're going to need in retirement?
Phillip, you mentioned that word assets, and so it kind of leads me to this question of, should retirees still have a portion of their retirement assets invested in the market?
I believe they do. Now, how much is up for debate, right? So I believe that we start with what I call the rule of 100. And the rule of 100 says, I'm going to take your age from 100. So 100 minus your age gives us a net number. If you are 65 years old, try that as 35%. So 35% is what we would be a starting point, not an ending point, but a starting point of what you might want to have invested in the market. Now, we narrow that down more by doing a risk analysis on you to determine what your risk tolerance number is on a scale of 1 to 100. And we use that to massage that number up or down, depending on what that looks like for you. But that's the key point. And I tell people, look, if you're 90 years old, you still need something, maybe 10% in the market, because that's going to help us continue to grow our money no matter what.
And I know many people have questions about this, Phillip, and so it kind of makes me think and wonder, why is it important for our money to keep growing in retirement? Because we don't want it to stop, right? We want our money to last as long as we live. But why is it important for our money to keep growing?
Well, I think, Danielle, if folks think back over the last 3 years, they know why, right? Because inflation, that ugly word, has really become part of our vocabulary, unfortunately, because everything costs so much more now than it did 3 years ago. And so a way to keep up with inflation is to grow our portfolios, to grow our investments to help us through that process of keeping up with inflation. And that's one reason that we look at the stock market, because the stock market historically has helped folks keep up with inflation. And so I know it goes up and down and there's volatility involved, but that's where we have that diversification between risk and safety. And so if we get those allocations done right, then we can handle some of the ups and downs and the volatility that we see in the marketplace. But all of this comes to planning. I mean, that's the bottom line, Danielle, is we have to have a plan. And that plan needs to be written so that you know what it is and you can go back to it and look at it and say, okay, yes, I'm on track. I'm okay. And that's why I developed the core retirement design, to help people design that retirement they always dreamed of. That's important. You've worked hard to get to where you are, and now you need to be able to enjoy that time in retirement. Give us a call at 863-877-1188 to go through our core retirement analysis. Again, that's 863-877-1188. It starts with a simple phone call. You and I discussing where we are, what you need to do, and how you can prepare for that retirement. Again, give us a call at 863-877-1188.
Now, you don't want to make any financial decisions without fully understanding the full impact on all the other pieces of your retirement plan. So do not hesitate to call Phillip and his team at 863-877-1188 to learn more about the benefits of having a comprehensive retirement strategy. Again, that number is 863-877-1188. Now, again, we were talking about what it looks like planning for that 5-star vacation, because when you plan a vacation, you know how to research flights and hotels and look for all the savings, but how can you do the same thing for your retirement plan? We're going to continue the conversation on what it looks like to create a 5-star retirement plan right after this.
Needing a second opinion on your retirement plan or to see if you're paying more than your fair share to Uncle Sam? Schedule your complimentary visit today. Text VISIT to 863-877-1188. That's VISIT to 863-877-1188.
Surprise parties can be fun. Financial surprises, not so much, especially when you're retired, like finding out you owe more in taxes than you thought you would, or having to go back to work to make ends meet. Maybe you'll be okay, but why not double check just to be sure? Call Phillip Statler at Statler Financial Services and schedule a no-cost retirement double check at 863-877-1188. Phillip and his team have seen their fair share of surprises over the years and know how to help you avoid them. Call 863-877-1188 to schedule your no-cost retirement double check with Phillip Statler at Statler Financial Services. Don't let a financial surprise derail your retirement dreams. Call 863-877-1188 now. That's 863-877-1188. You can also visit StatlerFinancial.com for more info. Advisory services are offered through Second Half Financial Partners, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor.
I want to help you understand some things. Number one, timing of your R&D, because they could potentially push you into a higher tax bracket. Imagine how fast your savings could shrink if you rack up penalties along with taking regular withdrawals and paying taxes.
Time to retire right. This is the Statler Financial Radio Show.
Welcome back into the show. You're listening to the Statler Financial Radio Show. I'm your host, Danielle J. Martin, along with Phillip Statler. He is the president and founder of Statler Financial Services. We're continuing the conversation of what it looks like creating that 5-star retirement plan. Because, when you plan for a vacation, you know how to research the flights and hotels and look at your savings to make sure you have enough, because you want to make sure you get the most bang out of your buck. But the question is, it's also same thing for your retirement plan. Are you doing the exact same thing? It's important to make sure that you are taking the steps to help preserve your retirement savings. So, Phillip, one of the areas where we can really help protect our savings, you mentioned this earlier in the list, is being tax efficient. So can you kind of explain to us the difference between tax planning and tax preparation?
Absolutely, Danielle. So it's really a simple distinction, right? Tax preparation is historic, right? Typically we get to, January, February of the year after, and now we have to do our tax return. So we're looking back to the previous year and we're taking that information and putting it on the tax forms and paying Uncle Sam what we owe him, and we're done. That's tax preparation. It's historic. There's nothing we can do to fix it after it has happened. Tax planning is looking ahead, making adjustments based on belief of what the tax system is going to look like down the road. And not just today. I mean, if we're just focusing on planning for today, it'd be one thing. But we are looking at saving tax dollars, not just today, but over your retirement lifetime. If we can save, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 of taxes today by doing something different, doesn't it make sense to do that? And that's part of our core retirement design. In the tax element, we are looking for ways that we can save taxes down the road, not just for our clients, but also for their children, right? Because that becomes important is how much can we save in dollars over your lifetime and your children's lifetime. And that's the planning process. And that's what we really have to look at when it comes to tax planning.
Phillip, I love this conversation because you make it sound so simple for us. So how do you approach tax planning? I would say with the goal that your clients can spend more of their retirement dollars the way that they want to.
So what we look at is, we look at what does it look like now, right? We know that tax rates are today probably the lowest that you and I will ever see. And we know that in 2026, they automatically go up unless some miracle happens, right? Which it could, but is very slim. And so we know that we're going to see some income taxes going up in 2026. And if you follow the national debt and what that looks like and interest rates going up, you can just visualize that the only way to pay that debt is going to be increased taxes down the road. And so, unfortunately, that's the belief of most of us out here, is that taxes are going to have to go up just to continue to pay the bills. And so it may make sense to pay some tax now versus paying higher taxes later. So we look at things like Roth conversions. That's a big deal. Or even just taking some money now and putting it into a non-qualified account, because taxes are lower now than what they're going to be in 2 to 3 years. But it's a process, because there's this little fine line you have to walk between, taking too much and doing Roth conversion and not taking enough. So I believe we should max out our tax bracket. So if you're in a 12% tax bracket, you need to be looking at ways that you can do Roth conversions to maximize that 12% tax bracket. If you're in the 22% tax bracket, we need to maximize the 22% tax bracket, because those tax brackets down the road are going to be a lot lower than what we're going to see. And so that's the process. And it's a big part of our core retirement design, is analyzing where you are, what tax savings are going to look like for you, and what can we do? How can we plan that out efficiently and effectively to make sure that we're paying the least amount of taxes over our retirement lifetime? The number to call to get on the schedule is 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188 to walk through our core retirement analysis. It's you and me, 30 minutes, figuring out where we are and where we need to get to. It's that simple, Danielle. It's only a phone call, right? 863-877-1188.
That's right, Phillip. We like to remind our listeners that there's no cost or obligation to have a 30-minute phone call with you and your team. Again, that number is 863-877-1188. Don't hesitate to call 863-877-1188. Phillip, as we're continuing down the list of creating that 5-star retirement plan, you mentioned healthcare. And so that kind of leads me to this stat that I want to share with you that says, according to Fidelity, a 65-year-old couple retiring in 2022 can expect to pay an estimated of $315,000. That's after tax for healthcare in retirement. Now, that is not including long-term care. So, Phillip, are retirees even aware that this steep estimate, and how can you help them prepare for that number?
Well, let me break this down in kind of my opinion and the way I look at it. And that's the 2022 number. Believe me, it won't be long before Fidelity comes out with their 2023 number and what that looks like. And it'll be more than $315,000, because I can remember a few years back, that number was $250,000. So obviously inflation is big when it comes to healthcare costs as well as everything else. And so you have to remember that big number is for a couple. So that's 2 people. And that's for your retirement lifetime. If you retire at 65, they're expecting you to live 25 to 30 years in retirement. And so if you break that down annually, it's a big number. Don't get me wrong, but it's not as hard to get your hands around as that huge number they throw out there. It is important to understand that this is why we need an income plan that allows for and gives us some inflation step-ups to help combat things like this, that inflation not only does for healthcare, but other items that we have to pay for. And so I think that it's just a process that we need to understand, that that healthcare is going to cost more and more, and that we've got to plan that and build that into our income planning process.
Phillip, what are some of the options for addressing, I would say, potential long-term care costs? Because that number I gave you earlier, it didn't include long-term care. And so what are the options for addressing the long-term care costs?
So I look at long-term care in a couple different perspectives, right? I look at first, because we didn't really have these 20 or 30 years ago. I mean, they were there, but they weren't mainstream, and that's assisted living. And so assisted living is one step in long-term care. But what I have seen, and this is true, I'm going to say in our local market, not necessarily in the Northeast or on the coast of Florida, because their prices are a lot higher than ours are. But a lot of folks in our immediate area actually can pay long-term care as far as assisted living out of their existing cash flow. Yes, is it expensive? It is expensive. But typically, if you have to go into assisted living, you're cutting out other expenses as well. And then there's nursing home. Well, that's a whole different animal, right? And so how do you pay for that? Well, you could buy long-term care insurance, way back when, and that will help offset some of the cost. There are actually life insurance contracts, life insurance that have living benefits that will help cover assisted living and nursing home. And so that's an option. There are annuities out there that have long-term care benefits where they take your benefit, their account balance, and maybe double it or triple it. There are different things out there. But let me just say, they all have pros and cons. And you need to look at them specifically and weigh those things out to make sure that they are going to make sense for you. And then lastly, if you don't do anything, then you're going to be subject to Medicaid is stepping in to help you out. Now, there's ways to plan for that as well. And I'm not the expert, but I have a team of folks that can help us walk through that process as well. So there are different avenues to take care of long-term care expenses. We just need to have the right team in place to help walk through that process, Danielle.
Now, to recap everything that you mentioned, Phillip, the 5 ways to create the 5-star retirement plan include a reliable income plan, a wealth management strategy, a tax-efficient strategy, and a plan to address healthcare, and also an estate planning strategy. I know you and your team have done this for many years. And so how do you help people build a retirement plan that incorporates each part? And what's the best way that we can contact you and your team?
Absolutely, Danielle. So again, that's why I created the core retirement design to help people design all parts of their retirement process. And it starts with risk analysis. How much risk do you have in your portfolio versus how much risk should you have in your portfolio based on your current circumstances? How close you are to retirement? How old are you? These are all important pieces of that puzzle. And then we look at taxes. What do taxes look like for you today? What are they going to look like for you in 5 years or 10 years? We don't know exactly, but we can make some assumptions and plan out what that may look like for you. And then we need to make sure that we've got that income plan in place. And we need to build it to make sure that we've taken care of inflation. To start that process, give us a call at 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188.
If you have questions about retirement, don't hesitate to call Phillip and the team at Statler Financial Services. They are here to guide you through a successful retirement. Again, that number you mentioned is 863-877-1188. Again, 863-877-1188.
Do you have a retirement plan but would like a second opinion? Call Phillip Statler today, 863-285-3815. Statler Financial Services, 863-285-3815.
Surprise parties can be fun.
Surprise!
Financial surprises, not so much, especially when you're retired, like finding out you owe more in taxes than you thought you would, or having to go back to work to make ends meet. Maybe you'll be okay, but why not double check just to be sure? Call Phillip Statler at Statler Financial Services and schedule a no-cost retirement double check at 863-877-1188. Phillip and his team have seen their fair share of surprises over the years and know how to help you avoid them. Call 863-877-1188 to schedule your no-cost retirement double check with Phillip Statler at Statler Financial Services. Don't let a financial surprise derail your retirement dreams. Call 863-877-1188 now. That's 863-877-1188. You can also visit statlerfinancial.com for more info. Advisory services are offered through Second Half Financial Partners, LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor.
Retirement isn't about stepping away from work. It's about keeping the life that you love and planning for a confident future. Today, we're joined by Phillip Statler. He is the founder and president of Statler Financial Services. We are continuing the conversation on how to make sure that you do not run out of money. So Phillip is here to share 5 savvy strategies to help your retirement savings work harder. So Phillip, this isn't a very exciting topic because that's the number one fear we have. How do I make sure I don't run out of money? So we're going to talk about steps to elevate your retirement savings. Where should we begin?
Well, I think, Danielle, the first step is to make the most of tax advantage accounts like 401ks or IRAs. These accounts help you save efficiently by lowering your tax burden. And if you're over 50, there's some catch-up contributions that you can add to help you even grow your savings faster. So, we can take advantage of those, especially if you're in a high tax bracket. We want to take advantage of some of those things that may lower your tax burden.
And that's a really great starting point. So as we're thinking about this, that's the first step to keep in mind. What's the next step to help elevate your retirement savings?
So step 2 is to rethink how you're spending now. And what I mean, take a closer look at where your money is going and see if there's room to shift some of it into your retirement accounts. Every little move adds up over time because look, here's the deal. The closer you get to retirement, the more you want in that account. And if you're just getting started, folks, now's the time. Start putting as much as you can away for down the road. Think about it. If you're in your 20s and 30s now, who knows what Social Security is going to look like when you get ready to retire. And so we want to make sure that we start putting away money now, and every chance we get, we want to bump that number up so that we're continually adding more to our retirement savings accounts.
Those are really good insights to keep in mind. That's a simple way to keep building your savings. Really good insights there. What about the timing when it comes to work, though?
Well, so timing. I would say, consider maybe working a little longer if it makes sense for you to help grow some of your savings because it gives you extra time to save. It gives you extra time for your Social Security benefits to increase. And so if you wait to claim them, then those benefits get higher and higher. So it's a savvy way to make the most of your resources. And there's other things that we need to consider here too. I mean, think about it. I've seen a lot of folks that retire at 62 or 65. And, after a year, they're bored. They don't know what to do themselves. And so they end up going back to work anyway. So maybe it would be good to just, maybe take a month's vacation, right? And get that out of your system and go back to work and keep going a little bit longer because that will benefit you ultimately by, again, increasing your savings, increasing your Social Security benefits. And so those are important things to consider as we look at retirement.
Definitely, Phillip. Those are some things worth thinking about. Okay, so we're continuing the conversation around strategic steps to help elevate your retirement savings. And so the first step was making the most out of tax advantage accounts. The second one was to rethink how you're spending now. And step 3 was to consider working longer, only if that makes sense for you. Step 4, what's that tip?
Well, step 4 is about putting extra income to work. So think about this. If you get a bonus, hey, let's dump a bunch of that into our 401k. Or you get a raise. Let's take that raise and let's don't take it and spend it. Let's take it and put that in your 401k or put it in your IRA. Or even you get a tax refund. Folks, the perfect tax refund is plus or minus $100. If you can get to that level, then you have done a great job. But if you get a big tax refund, hey, let's put it back into savings. Don't just spend it. Let's use it to boost your retirement savings instead, because it's all about being intentional with your money. And Danielle, let me just break right here for just a second and say, a lot of this we can look at in our core retirement design, because what we want to do in our core retirement design is help people design that retirement they always dreamed of. We want to look at 3 key aspects of their retirement and their portfolios. We want to look at the risk that they have in their portfolio and making sure that that risk is where it needs to be. Because listen, folks, the closer you get to retirement, the less risk you need in your portfolio. And that's probably one of the biggest things I see when I sit down with folks is that they haven't made an adjustment. They're still investing like they're working and they've retired. And that's a big shift that needs to occur if we're going to retire with some confidence. The second thing we want to look at is taxes, right? We know that we are in really great tax brackets right now. I know you don't like it in April when you have to pay, but right now our tax rates are ultra low. We need to take advantage of those, and that's what we help you do. We help you do some tax planning to make sure that we're paying the least amount of taxes, not just today, but for the rest of your life. And that's a big deal. And then lastly is creating that retirement income plan that we talk so much about on the Statler Financial Radio Show. How important it is to have that plan in place so that you know how much money you can spend in retirement. To get started, give us a call, 863-877-1188. It's a simple 30-minute phone call with you and me. I'm answering your questions. I'm making sure you're on the path you need to be on. Again, that number is 863-877-1188.
There's no cost, there's no obligation to speak with Phillip and the team at Statler Financial Services. This is another great reminder. You do not have to plan for retirement alone. There might be a lot of things going on in the economy. The market is unpredictable, but your retirement plan does not have to be. So again, that number, 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188. I love where we're going with this, Phillip. There's one final step. What's that final step that our listeners should know?
So step 5 is to keep an eye on investment fees. High fees can eat away at your savings over time. So take the time to check where your money's invested and look for ways to help reduce unnecessary costs. Inside mutual funds, there's expenses in there that you may not notice. There's investment management fees. Now, obviously, there's a fee for investment management, but make sure you're not paying too much. I see people paying, 1 3/4, 2%, 2.5%. And so we want to make sure that we're paying a reasonable fee for the size of account we have, because that's important. That, the fees you pay reduce your growth within there. But there's got to be, if you're getting expert professional help managing it, there's going to be a fee. You just need to make sure it's reasonable for what your account size is going forward, Danielle. That's a big deal.
And Phillip, as we're talking about, we went through the 5 strategic steps to help elevate your retirement savings. A quick review in case you're just now joining us. The first step is making sure that you get the most out of your tax advantage accounts. Step 2 is rethinking your spending now. Step 3, consider working a little longer only if that makes sense for you. Step 4 is putting extra income to work. And then that last step that you just mentioned, Phillip, is to keep an eye on investment fees. These are really great tips to keep in mind as we are thinking of ways to elevate our retirement savings. Any final thoughts for our listeners today?
So I want to mention this. We talked about tax savings, right? And in the first step is to use IRAs as much as possible. But what if you're in a low tax bracket? What if you're in a 10% tax bracket or a 12% tax bracket? Folks, if you're in those tax brackets, then tax deferral may not be the best thing for you. You may want to start using a Roth IRA, pay the tax now, and get tax-free growth for the rest of your life. And so I would encourage you to investigate that, especially if you're in a lower tax bracket. Even if you're a 22% tax bracket, it may make some sense to put some in tax deferred and some in the Roth, which is going to be tax-free down the road. So that's another area I wanted to mention real quick, because I think it's important that we eliminate as much as we can when it comes to taxes. So these steps are all about making savvy decisions now so you can have the retirement you wanted later. So if you're looking for guidance, folks, our team's here to help you. We're here to help you create a plan that works for your goals, because we want to know what your goals are, and we want to make sure that we put together a plan that's going to get you the retirement you always dreamed of. Again, that's why I created the whole core retirement design, is so that you could design the retirement that you always wanted. And we're here to help you do that. That's my purpose. That's really what juices me up. I love to see people, really and truly have a plan in place that's going to give them the retirement that they've always dreamed of. And we do that through our core retirement design. I mean, income planning is a big part of that, making sure that we know, how much money you can spend in retirement. That's important as we plan for retirement. But there's other things like taxes that need to be taken into consideration. We want to pay the least amount of taxes, not just today, but over your lifetime. And we'll help you plan that out. Then making sure that you've got that diversification right. Whether it's, do I have enough in the market? Do I have too much in the market? Where do I need to be on that scale? And we help people discover what that needs to look like for them in their current circumstances. Again, folks, our core retirement analysis is you and I getting on the phone for 30 minutes, answering your questions, helping you make sure that you're on the right path to that retirement you always dreamed of. And give us a call at 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188. I'd love to spend 30 minutes with you to make sure that you're on the path to the retirement you always dreamed of.
Again, there's no cost, there's no obligation to speak with Phillip and the team at Statler Financial Services. That number, 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188. You're listening to the Statler Financial Radio Show. Talk with you guys next week. Have a great week, everyone.
Needing a second opinion on your retirement plan or to see if you're paying more than your fair share to Uncle Sam? Schedule your complimentary visit today. Text VISIT to 863-877-1188. That's VISIT to 863-877-1188.
Advisory services offered through Second Half Financial Partners, LLC, a SEC-registered investment advisor. The opinions voiced and information provided in this material are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine what investments are appropriate for you, please consult with a financial advisor. Second Half Financial Partners, LLC does not provide tax or legal advice. Please consult your tax or legal advisor regarding your particular situation. This radio show is a paid placement.